Hey everyone, by now you've experienced Cannibal Mukbang and are now here for the Q&A with director Amy Kuge. I'm Sarah Stubbs, gastro horror extraordinaire or expert, whatever you want to call it these days. And I'm the co-host of Final Girls Feast as well as the community manager for the Chattanooga Film Fest. Thanks for joining us today, Amy.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be part of Chattanooga Film Fest. And I'm just so happy for everyone who came out tonight to experience the wild world of mukbang.
So that's the hard-hitting question first. Is it mukbang or mukbang?
So technically it's mukbang, but when we were filming and rehearsing, I noticed that the actors were saying either mukbang or mukbang. And so we all joined together and I was like, okay, what feels natural for you? Mukbang is kind of like the westernized version of saying mukbang, which is the South Korean, like the right way to pronounce. And I'm probably not even pronouncing it the right way. But in terms of just like them performing, I didn't want them to be thinking about how to pronounce it. So I'm like, okay, if you guys are saying mukbang and that feels more natural, just say it like that the whole time because I'm the one editing this. It's going to be a nightmare to try to make it all like one way of pronouncing it. So, yeah, I'm really sorry. I know I'm probably offending people by pronouncing it wrong, but it should be mukbang. But for all intents, for this film, it's mukbang.
Okay, well, I will stick with mukbang as a respect to the director. So, the use of screen life, social media, and influencers in horror have been on the rise in the past few years. However, with Cannibal Mukbang, you decided to use mukbangs as the primary element, which isn't, something that has been really out there. What led you to make that choice?
So actually, I started watching mukbangs a lot in college, and well, here let me rewind a little bit. So mukbanging kind of entered my life back in 2017. And it's something that I've always secretly really enjoyed, but no one else would talk about it. And when I'd find people that knew what it was, I'd be like, oh, yeah, you watch Trisha Paytas? Yeah, I watched Trisha Paytas. Oh, you watch Nikocado Avocado? Yeah, I watched Nikocado Avocado. So, like, it was this weird side of the internet that no one was talking about, yet these people had millions of followers and views and were making so much money off of eating online. And it kind of baffled me that this wasn't something that was in like the mainstream world. It was kind of like the secret thing that people didn't really want to admit that they liked. So I wanted to dive into that world a little bit because it's not going anywhere. In 2020, I started to see a lot more of it, especially with TikTok and more like vertical platforms, just showing people eat for like a minute. And sometimes they'll literally just be eating and just it's quick cuts of like food going in their mouth. So I don't know. It just was sort of a weird thing. And then in 2020, I started working for a mukbanger, kind of for research purposes, but also I used to do social media and like food styling. So it kind of fit into like what I was doing. So long story short, it's been a part of my life for a while, and I've always found it very fascinating. And working with the mukbanger back in 2020 showed me, kind of the what's behind the camera and like what her life is like. And I just thought it was all so fascinating.
Awesome. That actually really perfectly leads into the next question, which is what was the process for the food styling in this film and what was used in place for the human meat? This is something that always fascinates me as a podcaster who talks about food and horror. And so I love hearing from directors how they go about that process.
Yeah, so it was actually a very interesting and complicated process. So, my lead, amazing April Consolo, she's the best. She actually couldn't eat a lot of things. She has a lot of allergies and intolerances. So, we had to keep in mind the things she could eat and couldn't eat while we were doing everything. So, my production designer, Matt Weir, and my art director, Deanna Biaggi, we all just kind of brainstormed like, okay, how can we do this without making anyone sick and also something that we could do over and over and over again. So there's a lot of different kinds of food in the film. In the scene where Ash and Mark are making out on the couch and she's feeding him that charcuterie tray, that was just a lot of edible stuff. I was like, that's the edible cannibal meal. So it was like tons of salami, tons of just actual cured meats. Like there was a skull that we just laid all of this like ham and stuff over. And the like little goopy stuff that sort of looks like brains or like don't know, like mixed up meat. That was actually Rice Krispie treats with like food coloring and chocolate syrup and maraschino cherries just like chopped up. And Deanna, they made that concoction, and I have some great behind the scenes videos of Deanna like, this is good, and we're eating it. Like everybody tried it just to be like, what was this like? And the actors could eat that and they liked it. It was good, but they were so sugar high after that scene because we did that maybe 4 times in a row where they're just dunking their hand in and eating this huge like Rice Krispie treat maraschino cherry concoction. But the scene, the flashback sequence that was shot in Super 8 in Florida, that meat was actually like roast beef, just covered in like fake food or fake blood that was made out of food coloring and syrup. But yeah, I mean, some of the food was real, some of it wasn't. My special effects makeup artist, Ashley Thomas, she actually provided a lot of like the organs and things during the dismemberment scene. So those were silicone. Um, but yeah, there was a big mixture of things. We really tried everything. We even went to a butcher and got a bunch of really old meat for one scene and just had that laid out, and it was the most foul smelling thing ever.
Oh man, that's like a shared experience with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because that whole dinner scene in that film is was by the end of filming was apparently very smelly and stinky. So you can say that you are right up there with the cannibalism greats in that. You have
Oh, thank you.
provided you have provided a TCM experience to your cast.
It
Um,
was truly disgusting. And I haven't had meat since 2012. So me seeing all of that, I was just like, everyone was like gagging.
Oh man. So we've heard a few, but do you have any other fun stories from the set that you can share with the viewers?
Yeah, so something that was really important to me with directing was I wanted everything to be collaborative. I wanted people to not be afraid to come forward with any ideas, and I wanted the actors especially to feel very connected to their characters. So there was a scene that we had to film as a pickup after principal photography wrapped, which was only 14 days. We did everything very fast. So we had to shoot the sequence where she builds the blanket for it in her house. That was actually written to be on a roof. And because of budget, because of safety, we decided, okay, it shouldn't be on a roof. We'll film it outside and they'll be like playing tag under the stars and have like a little camp out, have a little like tent in her backyard. The day that we were set to film, it was pouring rain. So we were like, okay, where are we going to put this scene? And me and April separately had thought, what if Ash built a blanket for it? And we came together like the day before shooting and we're like, what if Ash built a blanket for it? Like at the same exact time. And so that scene kind of, to me, is one of my favorites. So magical, it's so intimate. And it wasn't even written to be in a blanket fort. Initially, it was supposed to be on a rooftop. So that's sort of like, the way that things kind of went down, you kind of have to go with the flow and be okay with things changing and be okay with collaborating with people. So like I had talked to my DP and my gaffer and April and everybody about that scene, and we all decided blanket fort was the best way to go. So that's kind of the environment that I wanted to make on set, was just that something that we could all just create together and be proud of. And like everyone that works on it has their own fun stories from each day of shooting too. But that's one that sticks out to me because it's one of my favorite scenes and it was not supposed to be like that at all.
Yeah, and it really, I think it's really like telling in the story because she brings Mark into this like place of like childhood safety. And
Hmm.
so it makes it, and I feel like that's more impactful in that moment than it maybe would have been on the roof or under the stars because of that, like bringing back to when you feel like as a child, when you're really safe and secure in life, nothing's really all that scary
Mm.
yet.
Yeah, and I was really inspired by that scene in the Royal Tenenbaums, where I forget the names of the characters, but it's Gwyneth Paltrow and they're like in that little blanket fort together. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? It's
Yeah.
tiny,
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
just it really forces you to like get as close and as intimate with your characters as possible, which was very important to me with the film. Like I wanted it to be a lot of close-ups, like a lot of just identifying with the characters and seeing the world through their eyes, in that really intimate way. So the blanket fort worked out really well.
Which is also kind of true to like social media because we see with social media we see the world through someone else's eyes up close and personal, and I think that's really cool.
Well, thanks. Yeah, yeah. I think that her being an influencer it's funny because she's never really even on her phone. But we do see her like through Mark's eyes, which it's just so intimate and chaotic and yeah.
So, because everyone hopefully has watched this, we're going to get into a little bit more of a spoiler territory. But the story doesn't have a happy ending for Ash and Mark. Why did you decide that their ending should go that route instead of like living together in cannibalistic bliss?
So it was really, really hard for me to kill Mark. Mark is when I wrote the script, I wrote Mark to be me, basically. So like even in earlier drafts of the script, as I was sharing it with my friends, people's main critique was Mark is such an asshole. I hate him. He's so unlikable. Why'd you make him like that? And I'm like, oh wow, I must really hate myself. Like everybody hates this character that I wrote to be me. So I changed him a lot and I made him so likable and sweet. And I hope that is communicated through the film that he is just this sweet, mumbly, awkward, you know, guy that we just all can see ourselves in. So I would love for them to end up together, but for me, I wanted the viewer to not be really sure if this is something that had happened before. Like maybe Ash has done this before. Maybe this has happened where she falls really hard for someone and she has these issues in this life that she doesn't really have control of when at the end of the day, we don't know how many people she's killed. We don't know if she's been harmed the way that Maverick was going to harm her before. So she kind of lives in this repetitive cycle of killing and eating and killing and eating and consuming. And I think that her killing Mark was inevitable. I don't think that they would have been okay with each other at the end. They were good for each other at the time. Um, but I think that the relationships that hurt the most are the ones that don't really like go anywhere. Like it's kind of like a situationship. Like he jokes that like I sort of have a girlfriend. I think that feeling is so much more impactful and sometimes more hurtful than actually being in relationships and breaking up. It's the potential of the relationship. And that's what I wanted to die when Mark dies, like the potential of something healthy and great. Um, Ash can't do that. She's self-sabotaging. And yeah, so I hope that I hope it wasn't too heartbreaking for audiences. And a little bit of a spoiler, but I am writing Mukbang too, and Mark will be in it in some way. I'm not going to say how, but he's going to come back in some way.
He's going to be the hamburger.
He'll be in it somehow. If you've seen American Werewolf in London, you might have an idea of where I'm going to go with that. But I won't say anymore. I don't want to spoil anything.
Well, you will have my unequivocal support in that. So,
Oh, thanks.
um, so speaking, that's a great lead into this next question. Where can people find you online to follow like what you're doing? And, because I'm sure people are going to want updates as to when this eventually gets physical release, because it's clearly going to get a physical release at some point. And I mean, I will be crushed if it doesn't personally. Like we can just, I'm being kind of selfish in this one, but where can we all follow you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Melty Feelings, and the film has an Instagram, Cannibal Mukbang Film. I also have a website, meltymedia.com, and there is some very exciting news coming up with Mukbang. I'm not allowed to say yet, but good things are happening, and there will eventually be a physical release. I cannot say when or where or how, but the future is bright for Mukbang, and April and I are she's co-writing Mukbang too, so we've been talking a lot. I have another feature that I'm developing right now that's about halfway done with just me writing and making a pitch deck and everything that I'm very excited about. So that's like a separate thing from Mukbang, but the Mukbang world will continue. I want to see at least three, but we'll see.
The trilogy. I mean, that's perfect. You like appetizer, main course, dessert. I think that's kind of perfect. And then you can throw a short in there and call it an amuse bouche.
Yeah, the palate cleanser short that's just totally different from everything else.
Exactly. Well, thank you everyone for checking out Cannibal Mukbang and our Q&A. Keep the conversation going over in the Discord server. There is a thread for Cannibal Mukbang. So come talk with us about it. We want to chat. And as always, respect cinema.